Have you ever feel like being watched? Okay, I swear I'm not paranoid, I'm just vigilant. Back in 2019, I found a video about how big tech companies like Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Meta sell their users' data. So I went to my Google account settings and found out about them collecting my GPS data without my explicit consent. Or legally, maybe I did give them the consent, but I was 15, okay? And everyone else was using Google products. It's not like I have a choice anyway. So it was shocking for me to learn. There's a whole industry revolving around selling personal data. But something else has been taking my attention lately. You see, every time I went online to discuss or find guides about limiting my personal data, I always stumbled upon an American-centric advice. Or American-centric problems like the Patriot Act that gave way to domestic surveillance. I find it really strange that for something so universal, such as the rights to privacy, only a portion of the world actively talks about it. Why is that? Well, this video was supposed to just be about that, but it has gone off the rails, and I'm taking all of you with me. So welcome everyone. I hope you enjoy this short video about digital privacy. First, what is privacy and what should be regulated about it? From the modern socio-technical perspective on privacy book, privacy is described as the appropriate flow of information based on contextual factors. This means that decisions on privacy management can't be separated from the context of information sharing, such as who's the recipient, what the type of information being shared, and what's the purpose of information sharing. For example, sharing accurate details about patients' health, the information, conditions to a doctor, the recipient, for a more accurate diagnosis that leads to an improved quality of life, the purpose, is appropriate. Now, contrast this with sharing health data to an employer with questionable purposes that may lead to discrimination to those that are perceived as less healthy. There's no denying that cultures and values that come with them play an important role in how society sees a problem. To illustrate that, let's take a look at these two journals I found. This is a journal I found detailing how Chinese public views their version of the Facebook 2021 data breach. Didi is a huge e-commerce platform in China, and they were caught collecting excessive user data by the Chinese government. The authors of the journal explore how Confucianism's emphasis on harmony shapes perception of privacy. I find it quite interesting that most of the violations found in this case are about failure to comply with the government's cybersecurity department, instead of the act of excessive data collection itself. Now, before people get racist and tell everyone that China doesn't care about your privacy, let me get this straight. They still have laws that prevent companies from doing excessive data collection. It's just they have different priorities as well. In the Didi case, they make a huge emphasis on how the company isn't, doing what the government is told. But they're still fine for excessive data collection. The other journal gives a more statistical and global research about how culture influences the way we see privacy violations. Take note on how the authors define privacy as control here. This will be important later. And how it relates to self-disclosing norms, or how normal it is to info dump to someone you just met. Okay, some people are collectivists, some are individualists, but it still makes no sense to me that privacy can be sold away. Mostly in the West, where people pride themselves on being the most democratic societies in the world. Remember that definition of privacy? It was just a few minutes ago, I'm sure you do. So is privacy just about control? Is it about how we disclose information and under what appropriate circumstances? Using that definition of privacy as a lawmaker, it's very tempting for you to make laws limiting what the market or the tech companies can and can't do with your personal data. This is what current regulations such as GDPR usually are about. Now, to adhere to those new rules, companies started to hire people specializing in governance, regulation, and compliance within their IT division. And hopefully with this approach, the users can then exercise their rights to privacy by having autonomy over their data. Cool, right? Except you're living in an information age, where it's practically impossible to avoid big tech companies. I was alluding to this earlier in the introduction when I expressed that I just can't get away from Google. This is exactly what Waldman and Chong argued about in their respective essays. A shift towards a more neoliberal market, where the market was kind of expected to govern itself. In big tech's case, it's to have the special GRC division neglects a much bigger problem here. You see, the users are often left without a choice. Use Microsoft products to work or don't work at all. Ironically, with this approach, the users are kind of excluded. They do not have autonomy over their data again. Due to this exclusion in the wake of neoliberalism and surveillance capitalism, people are deprived of their bargaining power. Chong argues that this will lead to unequal participation in politics, which is why it is a threat to democracy. Therefore, the definition of privacy as autonomy and control is not scalable and is considered old for modern standard now, where we're living in the information age. So relying on data extractive companies to monitor itself leaves the companies at power of privacy, and therefore undermine democracy by keeping the power structure in place. Wait, how did we get to losing democracy this quick? I thought we were talking about my parent. Welcome to the rabbit hole. So, where should I start? Okay. Zuboff coined the term surveillance capitalism to describe the reality of the politics of knowledge, which governs what may be known, who knows, who decides who knows, who decides who knows, or in other words, who governs and creates the social context of information sharing. She argues that private technology companies such as Google, Meta, Apple, Microsoft govern those social contexts, although they are never elected to govern such fundamental things about living in a democratic society. These companies have successfully commodified human behavior. Their product is literally information about our behavior. In the information age, data is the new oil, where they thrive on this economic contract that surveillance is a necessity. When surveillance is a necessity in the new information age, the old definition of privacy was control, and thus the regulation of it, mainly about keeping autonomy of self-disclosure, becomes irrelevant. Problem isn't the lack of control, but the system itself. The way these companies make profit mandates the violation of privacy. Trusting these companies, who are built on the commodification of human behavior, to govern itself is like asking an oligarch not to do nepotism. By taking human behavior as a commodity, thus monopolizing knowledge by concentrating computational power of information processing, they were able to govern collective and individual behavior, what information and what social context is appropriate to be shared, what reality is decided to be propagated, and thus achieve systemic dominance. In fact, this exact governance of collective behavior was used as part of the 2016 election Trump campaign. Details about almost 200 million US voters and analyses made by algorithmic models were used to categorize voters based on personality traits, political attitudes, interests, concerns, vulnerabilities, finances, and so on. They were then used to manipulate voter behavior that resulted in Trump's victory, especially in swing states like in here, Wisconsin. The campaign was basically showing ads that were targeted to three groups who were less likely to vote for Trump: one of these groups being African Americans, for obvious reasons. The ads basically persuade these citizens not to vote. In the city of Milwaukee itself, 80%, or like almost 1,100 of the potential voters were African American. Nearly half of them, 600 of them, were targeted by the campaign, and only 206 of those individuals cast a vote. This is an extreme example of systemic exclusion propagated by surveillance capitalism. The pattern of over-surveillance in African American is not a recent phenomenon. Modern-day location tracking, facial recognition, and face-of data gathering, all forms of over-surveillance, resembles that of the segregationist era where African Americans were surveilled obsessively. So think of the unlawful wiretapping of MLK Jr. These data points were used in a biased way to systematically exclude African Americans. Some biases include having a suggestion that a black-sounding name is more likely to be associated with committing crimes. Another form of exclusion comes from platforms that provide profiles for better decision-making. These platforms might not mean to discriminate directly, but since communities of color tend to have less income or have some criminal histories, those data points can be combined as barriers for necessities such as applying for housing, mortgage, or banking loan. They also tend to be ambiguous at best when it comes to the legitimacy of claim or prediction based on the data they have. Like, is the algorithm use balanced and unbiased in any way? Or is it just constructing the dangerous stereotypes of community of color? And we can see this problem with like AI now, how sometimes AI are biased with how they predict words when you give it some black-sounding names or black-sounding words or slangs. This is not good at all. Like these companies, not companies, but technologies reflect the discrimination in real life, and the companies that are responsible for this technology don't even like think twice of like what they're trying to say with their platform. This is why the systemic dominance of surveillance capitalism is really bad. Okay, this is not just about, oh no, my data is now up for the highest bidder. It's also like the consequences of what kind of information is appropriate, what kind of exclusion can be done to a specific part of the community. You see why I have gone insane? When I first started working on this project, I wasn't expecting myself to fall into this deep rabbit hole and how privacy and democracy intersect with each other. I think this video only proves my paranoia further than denying that it exists. But okay, hey, I don't want to end this video in a depressing note. I genuinely think there's still ways for the individual to act that can ripple into massive action and pressure towards the current ruling party over privacy. If you're interested in minimizing your digital footprint, you can go visit privacyguides.org, link in the description. They have easy-to-follow resources for non-technical people, and honestly, they would just explain it better than I do. And I must say, pay good attention to their threat modeling section. You can't protect everything at some point. Someone somewhere gotta know that you exist. Like, for example, please don't try to redact yourself from like official government files. That's just bad. So don't do that. And another helpful tip I can give to you is to just stop relying on big tech. I mean, don't go live in the woods all by yourself. But what I'm trying to say here is, when my privacy journey started like 5 to 6 years ago, it was like in the middle of COVID. Everything became online and I had to be extra vigilant about my digital footprint because that's what we do every day, you know? But then 2022 came. I entered university. I started to notice that, hey, I just don't use my laptop or phone that much anymore unless it's for working. My threat model is not that sophisticated enough that I need to keep everything I'm working on a secret. So essentially, I just started worrying a lot about this issue while still being able to fight against it. So go touch grass, basically. Meet new people at your local club. Close your unneeded social media account because honestly, they don't need your attention or your behavioral data. Don't let the promises of the digital world prevent you from being present here and now. And finally, of course, it's never too late to speak up about this issue to your friends, to your family, to maybe local representatives. Like, who knows? Things can change. Don't be scared. Organize or something like that. It's good to have this kind of optimism, but also skepticism that the world is not doing okay. And I hope that's kind of like the message this video is sending to a lot of you. I'm not trying to make you paranoid like me. So yeah, it's been a nice deep dive. Thank you.